Hello, everybody. Scott here, Geezerology. We have another bad album to tell you about in our series titled Off the Rails. Today, Bob is here to talk about a posthumous outtakes compilation released in 1982 to fulfill a contract obligation and to thwart a rash of bootlegs. Bobby, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Are you here to give us the shocking news that these Led Zeppelin leftovers weren't very good?
That is exactly what I'm here to tell you. In my humble opinion, these outtakes should have stayed outtakes. They should have stayed bootlegs. Love them or hate them, you have to acknowledge that Led Zeppelin was a significant force, in rock music, particularly blues rock and heavy metal. And when drummer John Bonham unexpectedly died in September 25th, 1980, it put the band into a tailspin and they decided to call it quits. But, in the world of rock music, nothing is ever finite. And you deal with endless farewell tours, and bands that continue on for decades is nothing much more than glorified tribute bands. So Led Zeppelin might have said, yeah, we're done, but their record company wasn't done with them. So as Scotty mentioned, 2 years after John Bonham's death, they released this album, and it was done to meet contractual obligations with Atlantic Records and to help pay for some tax liabilities for the band. And the more cynical thing was, all of these songs were out there on bootlegs, and Atlantic wasn't getting any royalties from them. So making them an official release now suddenly said, hey, we can start trying to get royalties off this stuff. So this was the Coda, which is an aptly titled album because Coda means, a concluding musical section that is formally distinct from the main structure. So yeah, this is Coda. It's the end. It was the last studio album from the band, and it was their first compilation album. And of course, there have been many compilation albums to follow this one, but this was the very first one. It was their 9th studio album, and it consists of 8 tracks that were recorded at various times through the 1960s and 70s. Some of them are studio tracks that didn't make it on to various albums. 3 of the cuts were intended for In Through the Outdoor, which was the last album that was done before Bonham's death. And some of the others are like live rehearsal takes and things like that. It was nothing that hadn't been heard before because, like I say, most of the stuff was out there on bootlegs. I listened to this when it first came out, was unimpressed, and just never went back to it. And then when we started talking about, bad albums by great groups, this one came to mind. So I went on to Apple Music, and I've listened to it several times since then. And if anything, my opinion has just gotten worse. The mixing on this just sounds off to me. Everything sounds very hollow. Which is surprising because Page is supposed to be, the studio master at remixing stuff. And this one, in my mind, just doesn't work. It sounds to me, and I know that Led Zeppelin people out there are going to crucify me. So before you do, I'm a Led Zeppelin fan, just not of this particular album. But it sounds to me like a bunch of high school guys in a garage trying to nail down their blues rock chops, and they're mistaking volume for quality, and it just doesn't smack of that Led Zeppelin, that we've come to know. And it sounds amateurish. The mixing sounds hollow. The live rehearsal cuts, they're not pure. Page, redid guitar work. He did, some stuff to them. Now, I don't know whether this was intentional or accidental, but John Bonham's drum work just seems to overpower everything on this album. And I don't know whether they were recorded that way initially or whether it was done maybe as a tribute to him. And, I recognize the importance of a good drummer to drive the music, to set the pace and all of that. But Bonham just seems to overpower everything here. And we do have an obligatory, drum solo from him. And much as Bill dislikes flute music and rock, I despise drum solos. Most of the time they bore me. They go on way too long. I feel the same way about this one. I didn't think it was really necessary. Like I said, 8 tracks were on this originally. When it came out in CD version, they added 4 more. And as I understand it, over the years, it's been re-released. And now I think it's like a 3 CD package. I haven't listened to anything other than the original one with the first 8 cuts. And we've had endless compilations and live releases of Led Zeppelin material, since the band formally called it quits. The album opens with a cut called We're Gonna Groove, which is a reworking of an old Benny King song. And it came from a 1970 concert at the Royal Albert Hall. That was one of the cuts where the guitar work were overdubbed. And we go into 3 songs that were supposed to have been on In Through the Outdoor. We've got a cut that was supposed to have been on Led Zeppelin 3. And I read an interview where John Paul Jones, I believe it was, who said that Led Zeppelin had used most of the material they had. So when they did this album, there wasn't much left over. To me, the album is incoherent. And it was done, like I say, out of necessity. And there are compilations of outtakes that work. I can think of a couple examples: The Who's Odds and Sods, Dylan's Basement Tapes. So compilations of outtakes can work if the material is decent. This isn't. So if you're a Led Zeppelin purist, you probably have already listened to this. It's maybe worth a casual listen if you kind of want to maybe hear, where they were at various stages in their careers. If you're a casual Led Zeppelin fan, or if you're new to the band, stay with the classics. Stay with Black Dog and Stairway to Heaven and all of that material. Don't waste your time on this. If you're a purist, listen to it, for the historical value maybe. But other than that, I can't recommend this. It just came across to me as very amateurish, and I understand why they did it, but to me, it never should have seen the light of day. The 17 or 18-year-old me, partying, drinking beer, smoking pot, probably would have loved this. The more mature me, who's got a little bit more discernment, went, nah, this is just very pedestrian blues rock, and it sounds like a band that was trying to find its way.
So being a spokesman for a subset of music fans who find even the greatest of Led Zeppelin to be mostly annoying, this would not be an album for that subset of people to listen to, I take it.
No, this, if you don't like good Led Zeppelin, you're going to hate this. And there is good Led Zeppelin out there. There's some Led Zeppelin stuff that I really, truly love.
I'll concede that. It's just not for me. Well, thanks, Bob.
You're welcome.
That was actually interesting for somebody who had no idea that this thing existed. So that was interesting to hear about this.
Well, it was something that I had buried in the dim, dark recesses of my mind. They're never to be brought forth into the daylight again, except for this intellectual pursuit. So.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. If you're a Led Zeppelin fan and you're still with us, well, I encourage you to go listen to one of 4 other albums, but not this one. Hit that subscribe button and hit that like button if you like what we're doing. Let us know and let the YouTube algorithm know that you like it, so they'll spread this around a little bit. And join us again. We'll talk to you soon. So long.
Now you got the right to sing the old man blues. They're trading your Playboy for some hush puppy shoes. One more time.